For more on the labor shortages in China, I spoke earlier to Yan Liang. She's an associate professor of economics at Willamette University.
There are about 287 million migrant workers in the urban areas, and they provide essential labor services to the industry and service sectors. So if they return home for the Spring Festival break, then businesses would have to scale back or even close down. So for manufacturers, they can budget for this relatively easier. They can, prep up production before the Spring Festival and have their inventory stocked up. But for service industries, it would be harder for them to cope. So they might look for, temp workers. But at the same time, because of the Spring Festival, everything slows down. A lot of services may be in relatively lower demand, like food delivery. So that helps to ease some of the pressures. But yes, the Spring Festival produces a pretty significant labor shortages in the urban area.
What industries do you see as being hurt the most by this trend?
Like I said, manufacturers, they definitely would have to scale back and, reduce the production during the Spring Festival break. And also some of the service industries, like, for example, the food delivery industry, the Meituan Dianping, which is one of the largest food delivery service. And they also saw, labor shortages, and they will have to find temp workers. So I would say across the board, because the very significant supply of this migrant workers in the urban area, which account for about one third of the working population. So when this great majority of them go back home for the Spring Festival, then I think a lot of the industries are being affected.
Absolutely. So long term, look at this issue for us. Are there things that can be done to mitigate this issue? I know you said when it comes to production, perhaps they ramp things up beforehand, or do you see actually this becoming even more pronounced moving forward?
Absolutely. So, China is increasingly faced with labor shortages, and that's sort of a trend. On the one hand, there is the population aging. Right now, the median age of China's population is about, close to 40-year-old. And then on the other hand, you see the declining birth rates, despite the repeal, of the one-child policy in 2015. The birth rates have not improved, as much as, the government would like. Last year, for example, there were only 15 million babies were born, and, 2 years ago, that was about 17 million. So we saw this trend of population aging and, low birth rates. So that means, China is going to see this trend of labor shortages. Now, the measures to cope, I think there are three ways we could think about doing this. For one is, we need to improve the situations of migrant workers, give them more access to education, healthcare, and other essential services so they can raise families in the urban area and, produce next generation of workforce. For two, there are 900 million working population in China, and only 780 million of them are employed. So that means we could either increase the labor market participation, or we can help the jobless to find jobs, help them, with skill training and whatnot, to help them to find jobs. And final, I think a very critical point for China is automation. So China has to invest in, labor-saving technologies, and so that would help to cope with the labor shortages over the long haul.